July 14th, 1994.
Tonight, cracking the case when the trail has gone cold.
We're cops. We're supposed to catch the bad guys.
Meet the super sleuths of Boston's cold case squad who dust off the files on the oldest unsolved crimes.
Some files just have a pulse that cries out instinctually, I guess, that tells you that this case can be solved.
Judd Rose is there with them to see how these extraordinary cops get their man. A remarkable undersea adventure.
You will be frightened. You'll be very frightened.
John Quinones comes face to face with the creatures we love to hate.
Unbelievable. They're 6 feet away from us.
Meet the man who knows more about sharks, the fear, the mystery, the misconceptions than almost anyone else in the world.
Well, Dad!
School's out. Do you know where your children are? We did an experiment.
Would you help me look for my doggy?
And learned a shocking lesson for parents.
Why didn't you run away? Because you wanted me to find Shorty.
Chris Wallace with what every parent should know to keep a child safe.
We learn from our mistakes.
It's like watching Babe Ruth, Ted Williams, and Joe DiMaggio playing in the same game. Domingo, Carreras, and Pavarotti. A primetime exclusive warming up for the concert they're calling a musical miracle. Is any stage big enough for these three giants?
We are going to be on stage doing what we really like most in life, to sing.
And our parting shot.
From ABC News, with anchors Diane Sawyer, Sam Donaldson, Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace, Judd Rose, Sylvia Chase, John Quinones, Renee Poussaint, and Nancy Collins, this is Prime Time.
Good evening. Sam is off tonight. You're about to meet a couple of unforgettable characters. They are the crusty, dogged, never-say-die detectives of the Boston Cold Case Squad. A cold case, of course, is one where the trail led nowhere. It looked as if the murderers had gotten away. These are cases nobody else wants to touch. Nobody except the unrelenting gumshoes who tell Judd Rose, in many cases, they think time is on their side.
Harvard Square is not where you'd expect a hard-boiled homicide detective to spend his time off.
Watch out.
Playing chess, no less. But being a master of this game may be why, as a cop, Tim Murray has all the right moves.
Basically, what you do in chess is you try to think what your opponent is going to do and why is he doing it. You try to reflect on the last move or past moves to see what he might do in the future. We do the same thing when it comes to murder investigations. It's an if-then philosophy. If I do this, then what will the bad guy do? If I was the bad guy, then what would I do? Hi, Tim Murray, Cold Case Squad. You got a minute?
A minute, a month, time is a relative thing for the Boston PD's Cold Case Squad. Their job is to crack old, unsolved murder cases and track down murder suspects who've been on the run for years, sometimes decades.
There's a rule of thumb among homicide cops about how long you've got to crack a case.
Yeah, if you don't solve it, well, within the first 48, 72 hours, the odds drop off dramatically that you will be able to solve it.
Detective Steve Murphy is the other half of the Cold Case Squad. He says, despite the conventional wisdom, time is often on their side.
A certain number of these cases, they get better with age, because as relationships deteriorate, people are now willing to talk about a person that they wouldn't say a word about years gone by.
The Cold Case cops started work in late 1991.
Dead victims from the 60s.
Since then, they've closed the books on 29 homicides.
Bloody footprints. That's a score.
Many all but given up on long ago. This is Homicide Headquarters, a scruffy 80-year-old building in South Boston. Murray and Murphy work in a second-floor squad room in the back. When we first met them, they were trying to find one Willie Foskey, a murder suspect who eluded the cops 27 years ago. The scene of the crime. It used to be a car repair shop, and in the back there was a regular dice game, $2 stakes. One day in 1967, Willie Foskey rolled the dice and won, but the other player refused to pay. So Foskey went out and got a shotgun and came back and demanded his $2. When the other guy dismissively threw the money on the ground, witnesses say Foskey blew him away and disappeared. Nearly 3 decades later, the chess game begins. First move, try to match Foskey's fingerprints with arrest records in states where he has family and friends. They match the prints, but in doing so find that while on the run, he's used as many as 10 aliases. Next move, use those names to search driver's licenses, employment records, anything to see if Foskey has a predictable pattern of behavior. Now, the if-then strategy. If he's already been arrested in one state, then where does the pattern suggest he'd go next?
Never been to South Carolina. Never been to Tennessee. Negative in West Virginia. Bingo.
The search zeroes in on Flint, Michigan, where they ask state police to stake out a house.
They're going to check it out. They're going to run it through the system and see where he is right now.
The end game begins. It's Foskey's move. No matter how many cases they solve, there are always more. Boston averages about 100 homicides a year. Around 60 are usually solved quickly. The other 40 end up here. And since there's no statute of limitations on murder, they stay here until they're solved. With about 1,000 cases total, how do they choose?
Well, my style, my technique is pulse. I look for a file that has a pulse in it.
But you know, some of these files here, from what you told me, have virtually nothing in them. I mean, no photos in some cases, no fingerprints. So how do you get a pulse, as you put it?
There's an expression in homicide that homicide detectives speak for the dead. Well, I know it sounds corny, but sometimes dead files can speak to us. We read something and it says, this case should be solved.
Such a case was the 1990 murder of Ray Johnson. Officer Bill McNamara and his partner were in Boston's Roxbury section responding to a street disturbance when they spotted a gang of kids.
The officers are about to stop and talk to them, and all of a sudden 18 gunshots ring out. The officers draw their service weapons, order everybody to the ground, and the gunshots ring out.
Neighbors looked out and saw the cops with their guns drawn and 17-year-old Ray Johnson dead at their feet.
The next morning, get a phone call from police headquarters to come turn in my weapon. In other words, I found out later, for the first 6 days of this, we were the suspects.
They were never charged. Turned out their guns hadn't even been fired. In fact, 18 shell casings were found in a nearby alley. The shooting remained a mystery for 2 years until Tim Murray went to the scene and took a look. Knowing this was gang turf,
we started asking questions, doing a little behind-the-scenes move, and basically we were able to crack this code of silence that this particular gang had, and it held for 2 years.
It had gone down like this. Blandon Mitchell had been walking by that night and saw a chance to improve his gang status by killing some cops.
Blandon Mitchell ran to his house, got his .380 automatic weapon, came into the alley, walked to the mouth of the alley, intending to shoot the 2 Boston police officers. Blandon walked to the end of the alley, looked out, saw the police officers, stuck the gun out, stuck his head back, boom, 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 boom!
He missed and hit Ray Johnson, his own friend. Blandon Mitchell was convicted and sentenced to life in prison, but in court, he showed no remorse.
Now the judge was going to pronounce sentencing. He said to Mr. Mitchell, he said to him, "Do you have anything to say before I pronounce sentencing?" And he said, "Yes, I do." He says, "I'm sorry I missed the 2 of them." Yeah, he did.
This case had what Tim Murray calls a pulse, just another way of saying he had a hunch, an instinct.
He has an uncanny ability to get in the mind of a number of these individuals whom he's never met.
Working a hunch is one of the basic skills of any good detective. But if the basics were enough, few murders would become cold cases. They would have been solved when they happened. So the cold case cops have created entirely new ways to track a killer. Case in point, a boarding house murder back in 1969. From the start, police had a suspect, but he'd vanished and, like most fugitives, changed his name. So, how to figure out his alias? Murray and Murphy used the one-way glass in the interrogation room to show us. They started with the suspect's real name, Earl Clark.
And then we used variations of that. We found out his middle name was James, and we tried Earl James and Earl Clark. As we continued the investigation, we found out his mother's maiden name was Griffin. And then we tried this variation of these names, Earl Griffin, James Griffin.
Right.
We further continued and found that his nickname was Stacy. And one of the combinations we came up with then, down the road, was Stacy Griffin, his nickname and his mother's maiden name.
That led them to a Stacy Griffin in Ohio, and the fingerprints matched. Earl Clark, alias Stacy Griffin, is now awaiting trial for murder. One of the most infamous cold cases is a name you know, Catherine Ann Power. She was the leftist radical wanted for a bank robbery in 1970 that left a Boston cop dead. Power was on the run until last year when she surrendered in a blaze of publicity. What you didn't know was that the cold case squad was on the verge of arresting her. They'd already zeroed in on a few states where Power was likely to feel safe. Acting on the pulse, they called authorities in Oregon.
We asked them to give us a list of females who got their driver's licenses between 1975 and 1980, who were less than 5'4" in height, who were more than 23 years of age at the time that they first got their driver's license. I was devastated when 11,000 names were delivered to me by the FBI. I was stunned. I was floored.
Working around the clock, they eliminated all the names that couldn't be Power. They figured she arrived in Oregon around 1975. So if the computer showed anyone with a documented history before that, like a parking ticket, they were off the list. That brought the possibilities to 155.
We have to start with a haystack and find the needle. In this case here, the needle was Alice Louise Metzinger.
Also known as Catherine Ann Power. The name was on their short list. Murray figures if she hadn't surrendered, they'd have had her in 2 months tops. Power left a virtual paper trail compared to Lewis Wolf. In 1967, when he was 21, Wolf shot and killed a man who insulted his girlfriend, and then he vanished without a trace.
How are you going to do a case with no file, no fingerprints, no photographs? And all you have is this little piece of paper where it says H or W Rebecca. I was driving around, and then one day it hit me, husband or wife, Rebecca.
So they focused on Wolf's wife, Rebecca. Checking a marriage license led them to this house, where Wolf's wife and children lived up on the second floor. On a hunch, they decided to find out who lived on the first floor, and that turned out to be Robert Wilson, a highly regarded senior engineer at the Boston Gas Company. Then another record search provided an interesting twist. Turned out that Mrs. Wolf had sued Mr. Wilson for child support of Mr. Wolf's children. The esteemed Wilson was, in fact, the fugitive Wolf. But it seemed so unlikely that the detectives spent weeks gathering even more proof before finally confronting Wilson.
After listening to what we had to say to him, he turned to us and said, "Gentlemen, if I wasn't Lewis Wolf, you wouldn't be here."
Wolf pled guilty to manslaughter. The judge gave him 5 to 10. Pat Carlson, sister of the victim.
He shot him 6 times. This is what was running through my mind, and the judge gave him 5 to 10 years because he was such a productive citizen for the last 25 years.
Some may question whether justice delayed is justice served, but not the cold case cops. Their motto sums up how they see it.
Let no victims go say we didn't try.
What are you saying there?
Well, we're saying we owe it to the families, we owe it to the victims, we owe it to ourselves to work these cases to the maximum extent we can.
And when the payoff comes, it's sweet. You remember Willie Foskey, the fugitive they'd tracked to Michigan. Well, he gave them the slip, but a month later, they asked Baltimore cops to check another lead.
Yes! Pick up the phone. Pick up the phone.
Foskey had been busted in Baltimore. Murray and Murphy go to pick up their prisoner and bring him back to Boston, where he'll stand trial. 27 years on the run, but as usual, they've got their man cold.
What's the message here of this kind of new form of police investigation?
I guess, first of all, you could say you can run and you can hide, but you can't run and hide forever. The second thing, I think, is more appropriate to the families of victims that are waiting out there, and that is justice will prevail.
Checkmate.
So how good are the instincts of these guys? Well, before they went to pick up Foskey, they bet that in all the years on the run, he had never been on an airplane before in his life. And they were right. His first flight ever brought him back to Boston in handcuffs to stand trial.
In a moment, you've told your children not to talk to strangers, but is the message getting through?
He's walking right out of the playground and right up towards the gate.
But first, forget everything you think you know about sharks.
They are not man-killers. They are not even man-eaters. When a human is bitten by a shark, that's a freak of nature.
Swimming with the sharks, when Primetime continues.
An infant nursery in an overseas hospital. These babies have just gone through their first important event, birth. The second important step will occur within a month when their parents document their U.S. citizenship. This is done at the nearest embassy or consulate with the assistance of the Personnel Center. The procedure requires paperwork and time, but American citizenship will last a lifetime.
He was a good cop. Now he's renegade. Renegade premieres Saturday, July 23rd. Don't miss it.
1, 2.
The Battle of Bands. Come check out some of the hottest bands in Europe as Yusra presents the 1994 Battle of Bands, July 23rd in Bad Kreuznach, Germany. Call your MWR office for details.
I don't know who it is. I can't answer your question.
Yeah, all right, thanks.
You don't have to be looking for trouble to spot fraud, waste, and abuse. But when you see it going down, you've got to report it. Lucky for you, Ace Casey is here with a couple of tips I learned as a cub reporter for the Lexington Ledger. Stick to the facts and start with the 5 W's. What happened? When did it happen? Where? Who was involved? And why you think it was fraud, waste, or abuse. And remember, you don't need to come up with any solution. It's more important that you break the news as soon as you spot a problem. Yeah, give me the city desk, pronto. The police will take it from here. You keep an eye out for fraud, waste, and abuse. And keep in mind the 5 W's of good reporting. Hey, Lou? Hold the presses.
Incredible adventure in the world of ancient predators. John Quinones, in a story we broadcast first earlier this year, took a trip to Bimini, a small group of islands about 50 miles off the Florida coast. He traveled there to explore the mysteries and misconceptions about sharks.
For as long as man has known the sea, he's been fascinated by the masters of this kingdom underwater. They've been around for 400 million years, long before the age of dinosaurs. They are sleek, fast, majestic, and vicious. The world's most efficient eating machines. Just listen as this nurse shark literally sucks a meal off the ocean floor. And watch as this Caribbean reef shark uses its 300 razor-sharp teeth like a hacksaw.
They're serene and serious. They never play and they never smile.
Dr. Samuel Gruber is one of the world's best-known experts on sharks.
You can see the evolutionary process at work by looking at a shark. And you can look into a shark's body and eye and you can see the 400 million years.
Sam Gruber should know. He's been studying sharks for more than 30 years. Born in Brooklyn, he grew up on Miami Beach. He studied medicine and ballet. But while swimming one day, he had a close encounter with a hammerhead shark. His fascination led to a career in marine biology. So he went to the Bahamas and the island of Bimini.
With their marvelous tooth structure, they can cut up a sea turtle.
He built a research laboratory for the University of Miami, where every year students and shark biologists study marine life.
Thank you.
The lab is a family affair. Gruber's wife, Marie, does the cooking.
Each boat should have a set of tail ropes, like the tail and mid.
Right.
Daughter Aya is the first mate. She's inherited her father's love for sharks. After all, he taught her how to swim with them.
I feel comfortable in the water with them because I don't feel like it's prey item.
She's been doing this since she was 6 years old.
I think it's just that they're misunderstood because they're really incredible and beautiful animals.
Her father says you can't really understand sharks until you get to know them. And so he made us an offer.
Well, we would like you to get a feeling for what a shark is in its natural environment, not one that's been caught on a hook or one that's held upside down or one that you see from the boat, but actually get down there and see them move, see their grace, see their form and their beauty, and feel the fear, and then feel that go away. You will be a believer after that.
5 miles off Bimini, we suit up for a journey undersea. And Gruber has some last-minute advice.
Oh, you will be frightened. You'll be very frightened, but you'll have plenty of protection. And don't forget, and this is the most important thing, sharks say sir to me. So I'll be right next to you.
You got a full face mask here?
Yeah.
We'll communicate through special masks equipped with underwater microphones.
It's a positive pressure seal, so all you got to do is inhale, and that'll get the air flowing.
Unlike most shark dives, we will not use protective cages. Gruber doesn't think they're necessary. We enter a world few people ever get to see. A world where moray eels and angelfish play among the coral. This is home to the rare hawksbill turtle with its camouflage shell, and the magnificent eagle ray taking wing as if airborne. As we marvel at the life and vegetation below, on the surface, scouts from Gruber's laboratory are scanning the waters for sharks.
Dr. Gruber's assistants are dropping down bait, in this case yellowjack, from 30 feet above in an effort to attract the sharks.
With their remarkable sense of smell, the sharks pick up the scent almost immediately.
Let's just back up a little bit to let them get to the bait.
At first, they approach tentatively, circling from a distance, checking us out. Typical shark behavior. But within minutes, they close in.
There he is, right there, took a bait, right there. He's staying around, right here. There it is. All right. Here's the nurse shark right here.
Make that 2 nurse sharks, a slow-moving species that feeds off the ocean's floor. Behind them, an 8-foot Caribbean reef shark, one of the most common in these waters.
Here it comes. Look at this guy. Unbelievable. 6 feet away from us.
It's my first face-to-face encounter with these predators, but soon fear gives way to fascination, and we get a closer look. There's a lemon shark, named for its yellow underbelly. And there's a black tip with its darkened fins, so fast and bold that he strafes our camera. Before long, we're even coaxing a baby nurse shark out of hiding.
Everybody thinks of sharks as indestructible creatures, but that's why nobody has much studied them, because you can't take one out of its environment hardly and put it in the lab. They die. They physically require no boundaries. They're more afraid of us and shy of us.
That was what was amazing to me, that they came 3 feet to my right and he just went right past me to the bait.
And that the nurse sharks would let you go up and scratch them on the head with the little billy club and such, but they're interested in the food. They're really not interested in us, and that's where the general public, makes the mistake. That
you seem obsessed by sharks.
It's true. It's true, I am. I owe them something. I owe them everything. They taught me a lot. And so I became obsessed. And the obsession went to completion, to like missionary zeal, when the killing started.
The killing. At least 100 million sharks have been slaughtered every year since 1986, killed for sport or for delicacies like shark fin soup.
Sharks all over the world began to disappear just because people wanted to cut off their fins and make soup out of them. It's like killing flamingos for their tongue and just throwing the beautiful bird away. They're no different.
Consider how slowly lemon sharks reproduce. They breed a lot like humans. Mother nurtures baby through a placenta and then gives birth to one litter of about 10 pups every other year. Gruber's research shows that only 25% of them survive. With such a high mortality rate, there's no way they can keep up with the slaughter. Today, about a third of all shark species are endangered. The only way to save them is to learn as much as we can about the way they live. Sharks feed everywhere, even in these shallow waters this close to shore. And that's why Dr. Gruber and his students are focusing their latest study here, tracking the habits of young lemon sharks. And as if handling these predators wasn't difficult enough by day, they do it at night. The research crew begins their work at dusk, laying fishing lines baited for lemon sharks.
Okay, let it go. Come that away. Come on up. Ooh.
It's big.
It's big.
It's really big.
As part of this study, the team measures and tags each shark with a transmitter to chart its growth and movements.
Yes. This shark can reach up and bite your face just like that. I'm not kidding. I'm really serious.
No one knows more about lemon sharks than Sam Gruber.
Lemon sharks are nasty. Now, I love them dearly, but they are, in many ways, like a mad dog. When you get close to them, they'll snarl, and they'll look at you, and they'll be steady, and boom, they'll get you just like that. And they will try to bite you. They will aim a bite at you.
We find out just how dangerous that very night. It was a close call. Gruber has handled thousands of sharks and has never been bitten. The young female is tagged and released. The transmitter under her skin now helps the researchers keep track of her.
It took off like a bat out of hell.
All right. Yes. All right.
All right.
Good job. As far as Sam Gruber's concerned, the work is far from over. Most mornings, you'll find him just offshore in Bimini, carefully checking his fishing lines, catching sharks so that they may live.
An ocean without sharks is a sick ocean. The ocean, for more than half of the existence of life, for 500 million years, has had sharks. That ocean needs sharks to be healthy. We just cannot destroy them with impunity.
If you like to scuba dive or snorkel, don't even think about trying what you saw tonight. Sharks are powerful animals, and only a trained expert like Sam Gruber is qualified to take you near them.
Still ahead, the biggest voices and the biggest egos. Together again for the biggest musical event of the year. We'll go backstage for a preview. But first, a summer safety guide. What to teach your child about strangers.
In the eyes of a kid, a stranger is some character who's very scary and a monster type. And in reality, he comes off as a nice-looking guy who's engaging.
When Primetime continues.
Saturday. Who do you like best? Melrose Place. Saturday afternoon at 3:50 Central.
Bowling is fun, and this summer at your USAFE Bowling Center, you can learn to bowl. If you have problems keeping out of the gutter, try Fin Busters. Help your game and win some great prizes. 100 days of summer, only at your USAFE Bowling Centers.
Prince Leopold von Bayern requests your presence at the 15th Annual Kaltenberg Medieval Fest and Jousting Tournament. This royal event is set in the beautiful backdrop of a royal Bavarian castle near Augsburg, Germany. There's plenty of food, drink, and entertainment for the whole family. So join in the medieval excitement the first 3 weekends of July. The Kaltenberg Medieval Festival, the only place where you'll find a night during the day.
The next time you decide to take a drive on the European byways, don't go alone. Remember to take your car registration, a first aid kit, a safety triangle, proof of insurance, gas coupons, or local currency for fuel, along with all other items required in your area. And last but not least, a good map of the area. So the next time you take a drive, make sure you don't go alone.
It's every parent's nightmare, a missing child. How are some ways it happens? When we first broadcast this story last November, it provoked a tremendous response. And since the kids are outside in the summer sun, we thought it was time to refresh everyone's memory on the things that you should do to keep your children safe. Here's Chief Correspondent Chris Wallace.
There's no worse pain. And it never completely goes away.
For David Gordon, the pain started on July 2nd, 1989, when his 10-year-old daughter Rosie disappeared. She was an outgoing, athletic child, growing up in a quiet suburb of Washington, D.C. But one summer afternoon, she didn't come home. 2 days later, on the 4th of July, Rosie was found by the side of a road 7 miles away. She'd been suffocated. No one has ever been charged in her murder.
It's every parent's worst nightmare, isn't it?
That's right. The death of your child is your own death, except you survive it. And you have to live with it for the rest of your life.
According to the Justice Department, there are more than 100,000 unsuccessful attempts a year by non-family members to abduct children. Close to 5,000 are taken. And some experts say that the real numbers are much higher, that many kids listed as runaways have in fact been abducted.
I'd like to tell you a little story and give you a little prevention tip.
Ken Wooden is a child safety expert. He's interviewed more than 1,000 molesters, studying the lures they've developed to persuade children to go off with them.
The reason the lures are effective is that they do two things. They short-circuit the thought process, and they short-circuit your basic instincts.
We went with Ken to a playground in Arlington, Virginia, to see just how effective these lures are. We invited several parents from the Washington area to come with their kids to discuss child safety. Debbie Beard said that she often talked to 7-year-old Patrick about not speaking with strangers.
So you don't think Patrick would go off with a stranger?
No, I don't. I asked him that this morning. He said, no, Mommy, I'd kick and scream and run the other direction.
We're conducting an experiment.
We told her that Ken was in the playground ready to test Patrick. She agreed to watch a TV monitor with us as Ken approached her son using the same lure that led a child to a park in Oklahoma 3 years ago, where he was brutally attacked.
What's your name? Patrick? Here, Patrick. My little puppy. His name is Shorty, and we're looking for him. He answers to the voice of little girls and little boys, and we're offering a reward of $10. Would you help look for him? Here, just hold the picture. Say his name is Shorty. Can you say, here's Shorty, real loud? Shorty! Good, good.
In 32 seconds, Ken had Patrick following him, looking for the lost puppy.
He's walking right out of the playground and right up towards the gate.
Shorty!
Good.
Dreadful. Ruined my day. Something I'll have to discuss with him much more thoroughly than I've ever thought I would have to do.
And Patrick wasn't the only child to go with Ken. When 4-year-old Drew heard about the lost puppy, he was out the gate in seconds. Ken also lured 2 brothers, 6-year-old Ronald and Hillary, age 2. And then there was 5-year-old Mika, the daughter of Margaretha Netherton.
When you see her walk off with that man...
I get a sick feeling in the pit of my stomach.
Just then, Mika came over to tell her mom about the man she'd met on the playground.
What has Mama told you to do when you see a stranger and a stranger comes up to you? What has Mama said to do?
Run away, but...
Run away. Why didn't you run away?
Because she wanted me to find Shorty.
What's the biggest single mistake that parents make in alerting their children to the dangers out there?
Basically, they say don't talk to strangers. And, you know, in the eyes of a kid, a stranger is some character who's very scary and a monster type. And in reality, he comes off as a nice-looking guy who's engaging.
Child safety experts offer these tips. Tell your kids never to go near a car if a stranger calls them. Don't put your child's name prominently on clothes or a backpack. An abductor can then call them by name. Keep a current picture of your child, of how he or she looks now. And most important, teach your children that if something seems wrong, they can say no to an adult, even someone they know. Rosie Gordon's dad says parents can help their kids.
You need to understand that you can reduce the odds. You can empower your children to stay safe. You can't make them absolutely safe, but you can make them safer.
Not surprisingly, the parents involved in our experiment were concerned that despite all their lectures, their kids had walked off so quickly with a stranger. So, a few days later, we invited 4 of the families to a school in Northern Virginia to talk about it.
Good.
When we showed the tapes again, there were a few uncomfortable moments. But the point wasn't to embarrass, it was to teach. Margaretha Netherton said she'd been telling 5-year-old Mika that strangers may seem nice.
So we've been talking about it since then, and talking about especially what strangers are and what trust means. And
today I met a stranger when I was going home from school.
And did you talk to him?
Yeah.
What made it okay to talk to the stranger?
Because my mommy was there.
Sounds like she learned her lesson pretty well. You did good, Mika.
We learn from our mistakes, and that really is true.
But for all they were teaching their kids, our parents still had plenty of questions for 2 experts we'd brought along. Ken Wooden, who's put together the Child Lures Family Guide, and Dr. Ava Siegler, a child psychologist who's written What Should I Tell the Kids?
Perhaps it was enough a generation ago just to say, don't accept candy or food from anybody. But now we have to start saying to kids, look, suppose someone were to come and say to you, Mommy is waiting for you in the car. Would you go?
The children in our experiment came from different backgrounds. Drew Jenkins is growing up in inner-city Washington, while Debbie Beard and 7-year-old Patrick live in the suburbs of Virginia. But Ken Wooden said all children have to be prepared for such ploys as the car lure.
All right, I'm driving, and I'm in this area, and I'm really hungry. I come to a stop, and I say, is there a McDonald's around here? Is there?
Yes.
And do they have the Big Mac?
Mm-hmm.
And the French fries?
Yes.
And the Coke?
Yes.
Can you give me directions, please? Here, I got you. Come in the car. You're in the car. Now, real quick, let me show you what you should have done. Stand up and take 2 giant steps backwards. Now, can I grab them?
No.
No? The lesson, pure and simple. If you feel very uncomfortable, just run. And run which way? Here's my car facing this way. The opposite. Outstanding, Patrick. Wonderful.
Which brought us back to our experiment in the playground, where the children went off to find Shorty.
These kids were being good. They were being generous. They were being kind. They were helping a man who was looking for his puppy. How do you keep those qualities alive in a child while at the same time keeping the child alive?
We do this every single day. We do it when we tell kids not to eat street food. We do it when we tell kids, to be careful about bullies. This is what it means to be a parent, is to constantly walk this line between exposure and protection.
It's better to err on the side of safety. You can always draw back some. But if your child is gone or something terrible happens, you can't go back and redo it.
Above all, the experts told us that a child should understand that a stranger is not just someone who is scary or mean. And children should never go anywhere with someone, even someone they know, unless you, the parent or guardian, have told them it's okay.
Still ahead, dropping in on an exclusive rehearsal when Primetime continues after this.
You wouldn't just give your PIN number to anybody. Nobody'd leave their wallet just lying around. So why would you give someone your computer password?
Check.
Monday. Are they safe?
Just the three of us and our Doberman in a can.
Living single. Monday night at 7:35 Central.
Can anybody describe the suspect?
Yeah, he looked like my TV with feet.
The Patient Liaison Program is intended to reduce the stress military members and their families may have when needing medical treatment on the economy. Find out who your liaison is. Call or stop by your local military health clinic.
I like my job, but I'd really like to learn how to write computer programs.
Get started toward your learning goals by visiting the Education Center.
See this? Someday I'm going to design one of these babies.
Professional counselors can recommend ways to improve your job skills and even get a college degree.
While my husband's stationed here, I've decided to take some college courses.
Got plans for the future? Your Education Center can help you get started.
You do tricks? Monday. Geneva's in jail.
No, Mark. We got arrested for...
Hanging with Mr. Cooper. Monday night at 7:10 Central.
You have to do something. No, I will.
The hours children spend outside school are just as meaningful as the hours they spend in it. Children need quality time to receive attention and appreciation from caring adults. The School-Age Latchkey Program, meeting your child's needs.
On the open seas. On land. And in the sky. The United States Navy, Army, and Air Forces in Europe, working together, comprise the United States European Command. And together, we stand for peace.
Now for the latest developments in two reports we brought you recently on Primetime.
They started
In December, we introduced you to the courageous young woman, Lori Schiller, who was our guide through the mental illness schizophrenia.
If you could imagine what it's like day after day of being tortured by this voice or these voices that like crawl inside of you.
Lori Schiller says she rarely hears voices now, but still takes medication to control her illness. And we wanted you to know she's now published a book about her experiences called The Quiet Room. And remember Sam Donaldson's profile of flamboyant fight promoter Don King?
Yes, I shall give them money. M-O-N-E-Y.
Well, today a federal grand jury handed up a 9-count indictment against King. He allegedly tried to get money by making a fraudulent insurance claim worth $350,000. Primetime continues in a moment.
Is the staff judge advocate ready to continue?
Yes, sir. I'd like to call Technical Sergeant.
Our court-martial system exists to achieve justice, and every service member is a part of it. You may be called as a witness or a member of the jury, the panel in the military court.
Objection. Sustained. The panel will...
A special court-martial tries intermediate offenses, crimes such as aggravated assault, theft, or being absent without leave.
Could you tell the court what was found during your search?
The court usually consists of a military judge, a court reporter, a trial counsel, a defense counsel, and a panel of at least 3 service members.
The defense has no further witnesses.
Both sides argue their positions, and it is the role of the court to determine innocence or guilt. That is accomplished when the panel reaches a verdict. The Special Court-Martial, an important part of the Uniform Code of Military Justice.
When James Bennett came yelling at my window last night, I thought my house was on fire. Turns out his wife was in labor. It was a breech birth, and we nearly lost her. But she pulled through, her and a 9-pound boy. Life is a precious thing.
Embodied by the country doctor of days gone by, the spirit of compassion has a special place in American history. The spirit was present after the 1906 San Francisco earthquake, when the armed forces assisted with rescue operations. It was there during the liberation of concentration camp prisoners in World War II. And it continues today in groups like the Peace Corps, providing assistance to countries in need.
Seeing Mary Bennett holding that baby reminds me what my job is really about. It's the spirit of compassion. Jim?
This Saturday night at Dodger Stadium in Los Angeles, there'll be more star power on one stage than almost any time since the Big Bang. Arguably, the three most astonishing tenors of our time are going to be singing together for the second time. Nancy Collins was backstage as the Big Three warmed up, so you can sit back in your chair and listen to what someone called God's Trio.
They were perhaps the greatest collection of classical talent ever assembled on one stage. The three superstar tenors who came together in Rome in 1990 for an unprecedented concert celebrating the World Cup Soccer Championship. The man who brought them together, Maestro Zubin Mehta.
I stand there and I'm in awe of them, as the public is. I love floating with them musically in space. I love breathing with them.
Just yesterday, they granted Primetime Live a rare opportunity to watch the extraordinary rehearsal of the three legends who dare to share the same stage. Italian-born Luciano Pavarotti. From Spain, Jose Carreras.
Through light and darkness, through all time to be, and pray his love may make our love divine.
And also from Spain, Plácido Domingo, who arrived late for rehearsal due to his other passion, the World Cup semifinal. Jealousy between the three of you?
No, I think it's work for everybody, you know. It's a happy day for us to be able to sing together again.
Are you really friends with Pavarotti? You've said you're friends and rivals, you said.
Well, it has to be that way. I mean, obviously we are friends.
We are rivals just in one thing. Then we try to do our best and to try to be better one or the other, all three of us. Was called very serious way to approach our profession. And that is the way in which we are rivals.
The ego that goes along with this business, the business you're in, is that a myth or is that true?
I don't know if ego is the correct description of what I'm trying to explain, but to believe in yourself, to have a certain kind of self-confidence, it's extremely important, particularly before a show, before a concert, before an opera performance, to feel sure about yourself.
In 1987, Carreras, then age 39, was diagnosed with leukemia. For 1 year, he underwent grueling medical treatments to battle the 5% chance he was given to live.
Were you in contact with him during that period when he was ill?
Constantly.
How did that affect you?
I think it was a miracle that he's here with us. And I thank God because he saved a person who give a lot of pleasure to other people. And he's a great guy. So I think God he chose the right one to be nice to.
Jose Carreras has been free of leukemia for 6 years.
The year you were away from music, what did it teach you about your music?
Well, the man and the artist, they walk together, they walk parallel. And as reflected that, probably I'm a little bit deeper as an interpreter, as a performer, as a singer, maybe.
Did it give you perspective on your own life when you saw a friend suffer like that?
Yes, I suffered myself when I was a kid. When I was 12, I was in coma for 5 or 6 days. So.
Growing up in Modena, Italy, Pavarotti says he almost died from a viral infection.
I know exactly what is life and death. And so I understand this his feeling when he was there fighting with the dead, you know. And he won the battle. We tenor are very tough guys.
It all started. Let's welcome Jose back. Since we are all there in Rome for the World Cup in any case, let's give a concert. That's how it started.
But how does it work? Who gets to sing what aria?
The three tenors chose their favorite pieces, and Lalo is written in such a way that they all sort of dovetail one into the other. Because sometimes one wants to sing the other one's praise. He says, well, now you do that, and now I'll do that. And it takes up a lot of time at rehearsal.
Is it a playful argument, or?
Yes, no, there's no argument. They've all considered Jose as the musical conscience of the three of them, and he usually makes the suggestions. He goes over and thinks about it a little bit. He's trying to end Italian style, and I have here, he's written here, stormy weather. Stormy weather. That's another song.
Quick description of Pavarotti.
Well, he's the most innately intelligent musical singer. When you really hear him sing, the vowels are perfect, the consonants, we take it for granted. He's this incredible combination of words and music that come out.
And Placido?
Placido is sort of the universal singer of all times.
This Saturday evening, the three tenors are expected to fill more than 50,000 seats in Dodger Stadium, which will be transformed from a baseball diamond into a neoclassical pavilion. Concert producer Tibor Ruda says the event only took 2 years and 274 pages of legal contracts.
This is going to be such an event, we can really say that it will be the concert to close the 20th century.
The tenor voice is the most exciting voice. It's not only it's the sensation of danger. When you have three tenors, you never mind three tenors. When you have one tenor, you always have the sensation, my God, what he's doing is really difficult. And what happens is when we are there, so we feel that, we feel the danger, so we play a little bit with the danger, you know.
We are romantic. I hope we are romantic. I hope we are considered romantic. We are very romantic.
Does it flow over to other areas of your life?
Well, to have the courage and to go on the stage, to sing something which is real, is created at that moment. You must have a very, very romantic heart.
We are going to be on stage doing what we really like most in life, to sing.
Pavarotti estimates that 1.7 billion people around the world are going to be watching this Saturday night.
She was a free spirit, and the first time she saw a plane in flight, Amelia Earhart knew she had to fly. On a plane called the Friendship, she became the first woman to fly across the Atlantic in 1928, but only as a passenger. That flight fueled her own ambition, and in 1932, she took off in a single-engine plane to cross the Atlantic, flying so low at times she almost skimmed the Whitecaps. 15 hours later, she landed in Ireland, the first woman to fly the Atlantic solo. And in 1935, she became the first person to fly solo from Hawaii to California. 2 years later, she set off with her navigator to fly around the world. Tragically, no trace was ever found of them. In a letter she left behind, she said, "Women must must try to do things as men have tried. When they fail, their failure must be but a challenge to others. Amelia Earhart, American pioneer of aviation.
Finally tonight, our parting shot. It has to do with heat waves and high rises. So, imagine it's hot outside, really hot. And as you look out from your high-rise apartment, you happen to see, veterinarians call it high-rise syndrome.
We normally, in a summer, see somewhere around 200 or a few more cats that have fallen out of windows or off balconies.
Meet Leo. His owner, Kirk Romero, came home to his New York apartment to find Leo had tuned in and dropped out.
He fell from this corner right here, and he landed right here on this planter. Laying here, just such.
Leo's 45-story plunge set a new record in New York, which has more than its share of miscalculating cats, apparently because most New Yorkers don't put screens on their windows. But when all is said and done, the experts say, Leo may have been lucky to fall from such a height.
They fall with their arms out to the side, with their head back, and they actually land right on their chest and abdomen. And that seems to absorb quite a bit of the shock.
9 lives indeed. By the way, no felines were injured during the production of that story.
When Wally Bonfield opened his service station back in 1927, he never dreamed he'd retire as a great American investor. Of course, that was before he started buying U.S. savings bonds. To Wally, they're a tradition that still makes sense. Kathleen Milton has another story to tell. After 40 years of taking care of the family business, she now insists on taking care of her family. This great American investor buys her grandchildren savings bonds as gifts, a tradition she intends to continue. As for Corporal Steve Beckett, he became a great American investor back in boot camp. Like many of the men he serves with, he buys bonds through the payroll savings plan, the safe, convenient way to invest in his future. To Steve, bonds have a tradition as strong as the Marines, and they're both always faithful. U.S. Savings Bonds, Department 893, Washington, D.C. 20226.
Sam will be back next week. In his honor, we say join us for another edition then of Primetime Live.
Tonight on the Friday Late Show, it's terror time once again, this time with Fright Night. If you have a weak stomach, don't watch.
Get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
The American Broadcasting Company, ABC.